It'll be great one day when I get the chance to film an entire video and the camera doesn't shut off or the battery doesn't fucking die. I think that was, the SD card was filled, so I had to delete some stuff off of there. Before I left, we were talking about Fantagor #1, 4 printings altogether. I think that's all that I was saying. I'm looking forward to reading this one though. I only have the one other issue, and I can't remember how many issues this series went, so there we go. In grabbing some comics from this guy that I wasn't familiar with, and by artists that I wasn't familiar with, there was a couple that I picked that, according to the little bit of research I've been doing online, are kind of considered duds, so to speak, in the underground comic world. And this one is, as he describes it on the back, it's called Googie Warmer, and Googie Warmer is a good example of the print mint being willing to print anything that walked through the door. They printed 10,000 copies of this comic book at the beginning of the underground frenzy in 1969, and 3 years later, after millions of undergrounds had been sold, the print mint still had copies of Googie Warmer gathering dust in their warehouse. So, and there was only 10,000 copies of this, and it was only printed the one time, and it's not considered kind of a highlight of the underground comics scene, but I don't know, I looked through it and I think it looks pretty cool myself. We'll see. The deal with this Wendell Allen Pugh, he has a Master of Fine Arts degree from the Southern Illinois University, which had to help when he decided to create an underground comic book, right? Well, Pugh didn't think so, as he relayed to Mark James Estrin in A History of Underground Comics. My stuff is all fucked up because I went to school for 6 years and got all involved in aesthetics and professionalism, which I've decided is all bullshit. I wish I'd never learned to draw. Learned in kind of italics. So yeah, I don't think he did much else. I think he did this and maybe a couple of other things, but that was it. He was completely gone. He just left the comics game altogether. So I'm looking forward to digging into a book that's kind of widely considered not a good underground, just to see what that'll entail exactly. Along those same lines, another one that isn't necessarily held in the highest regards is Hehe from 1970. This is the only printing, 36 pages with some names that I don't know. Larry Rippey, Hector Tellez, D. Angstead, Roger Wade Boyce, but the names I do know are Tom Veach and Rick Veach, and Rick Sloan are a couple of names that I am familiar with. As it says on the back here, a lot of the comics were created while people had their minds expanded or just high out of their fucking tree. And he says that this is maybe an example of these guys got really high, then got even higher, and then decided to write a comic because it's just kind of purely nonsensical and just silly. And so again, another one that even though it's not considered a classic necessarily, I'm really looking forward to checking out what that's all about. Another one by John Thompson that I showed off the top. This is Kukue Comics. This is from December 1969, and it's the first and only printing. This John Thompson character, I'd like to find out a little more about him. So the Book of Raziel is the previous book that I showed you there. The art in this one is pretty fantastic as well. Thompson knew that his enigmatic comics were perceived in as many ways as there are types of readers. And then a quote from him is, "The viewer as relative evaluator puts the value into these things. Thus they are mirrors of consciousness. Some folks think they stink. Some folks think they hold great cosmic truth. Some think them obscene. Some are bored. Some are scared. Your reaction to them is relative to your frame of mind. This is obvious," he says. So it sounds pretty 1969. I mean, what can I tell you? It sounds exactly of the time. And again, his illustration style is pretty fantastic. There's parts of it, for example, the kind of spaghetti type detail to the hair on his characters sort of reminds me a little bit of Basil Wolverton's type of stuff, and you can make out some of that on the front cover possibly. But yeah, this is an interesting creator that I'd like to read some more of, so I'm glad I have 2 of his now. I'll save this one for last, actually. And then again, yet another one that's maybe not considered that spectacular, by a gentleman named Buckwheat Florida Jr., who was another one of those guys who came and went really quickly, didn't do much. According to the back here, he did some stuff and contributed to the early Yellow Dog tabloids. And based on that work, the Print Mint gave Florida Jr. a one-man book in 1969, after which he essentially disappeared from the comic book landscape altogether. Not only disappeared from the comic book landscape, but just completely fucking disappeared, and nobody knew where he went or where he was. The little bit of research that the guy on Comics Joint did said there was one obscure blog post that indicated that he has lived in Chiang Mai, a mountainous region of North Thailand, for many years and spends a lot of time painting in between travels. So 5,000 copies of this were printed, and it was never reprinted. So that's also cool to have as well. Finally, from this stack, one that I'm really excited about as well, and I posted a picture on my Twitter, is my favorite anthology. If you watched one of my last videos, Snarf. This is Snarf issue number 1, the first printing. I believe there was only, there was only one printing of this. Apparently one of the things that Dennis Kitchen was really good at was meeting the demands of his followers, so he rarely had to reprint these. The first time he had to was for the 4th issue. He underestimated and printed only 10,000 instead of 2,000, so he did an extra 5,000 for a second printing, which is at the time especially, and I mean even now, any sort of independent publisher, if you don't know how many you're going to sell and you print 20,000 and you end up selling 1,000 books, that's a fucking hell of a lot of expense to print up a lot of books and not get your money back on. So I'm super excited to have this. Again, another series that I've read all digitally. I have this digitally, but it's so great to have this in my hands here. And I see that Wendell Pugh is in this as well. Tom Boxall is in this. Dennis Kitchen, of course. Ed Goodman, Everett Garratz, Dave Herring, and Don Glassford. So there it is, fucking Snarf number 1. And I think on one of my previous videos, there was a guy, P. Dilla, I think, had just asked a question of if he wanted to get a little further into underground comics, are there any titles that I would suggest? And to anybody else who's watching who doesn't know where to start, I think it's always a safe bet to start with anthologies, just to get the variety of artists within that sort of wheelhouse, so you can sample their work and see which resonate more for you. Once you discover that, then you can kind of follow the trails that just naturally come from that. But Snarf would be one that I would highly recommend, and it went for many, many years with like long gaps in between some of the issues, so they're not, it's not one of, like, the early issues are harder to find, but the later issues are supposedly not extremely difficult to find. Again, I know that when I say these type of things, I'm talking as a guy who lives in a city that has like 6 or 7 different comic shops where I can go hunt for stuff, and I realize that's not always the case for everybody, but they're not incredibly hard to find, some of the later issues, and they're also not incredibly expensive either, those later issues. This one was a couple of dollars more because it's the first issue. That's the only reason. 1972, did I say already? Yeah, 1972. So that's it. That's the pile from the guy in Quebec. Another gentleman that I ended up buying from was from the States, and he was a guy that his auctions jumped out at me because of the unbelievably cheap shipping that he had associated with it. So it was another one of those instances of contacting him and saying, let me get this straight, if I buy one comic from you, it's only going to cost me whatever it was, $8 in shipping. And again, I mean, you have to understand, like, most of these auctions that I go to for a single comic, there's people that are charging $25 in shipping for a single comic, which means a couple of different things to me. You're too fucking lazy to figure out how to ship things properly and inexpensively, or you're just automatically quoting like a FedEx type of price, like an overnight type of price. Because to ship one comic for $25, you're out of your fucking mind at that point. I don't buy it whatsoever. And it especially brings it into more of a contrast when you do find those guys who have cheaper shipping. It came amazingly packaged. The comics are in even better condition, I think, than he had described on the page, and the shipping was incredibly cheap. I don't really know what to say about the people that do these exorbitant shipping costs. I don't know where they're getting their numbers from. Anyway, so it's a bunch of comics and then one magazine, and this, even just flipping through this already, it really takes me back to the size of the comics, seeing the artists that are contained in this particular book, and it just really takes me back to when I was buying these magazines, and I'm sure I've seen this one on the shelves back in the day. This is the 80s, I believe. Yeah, 1980 apparently. And this is called Young Lust number 6 from Last Gasp. Rip-Off Press Comics had a magazine. Centrifugal Bumble Puppy, which was a drawn and quarterly magazine, I think I've shown off before. There was a number of these magazine style underground anthologies that were popping up. So yeah, it's not in. This is probably the one that's in the weakest condition. It's not incredible, but it's not by no means horrible either. There's a little look at some of the interiors there. So yeah, there we go. And again, there was a comic here that I picked up that I hadn't heard of before, and it was cheap, and throwing it in with a bundle didn't cost me anything extra shipping wise, so I thought I'd give it a shot. From Coconut Comics, and it's called Merton of the Movement number 1 by London. What's his first name? This is by Last Gasp. Bobby London, Ted Richards, Gary Halgren, and Sherry Flanagan. So there you go, a little bit of an anthology there. Looks like a pretty great one, actually. Sherry Flanagan, was that her name? Sherry? Yeah, Sherry Flanagan, known for Trots and Bonnie. I'll see if I can find a sample here. Yeah, here we go. Trots and Bonnie, which I enjoy her stuff. The few Trots and Bonnie stuff that I've read, I really liked. So that's very cool to have that. And the rest of these I was aware of. So before Young Lust was a magazine, it was also a comic size as well. So this is issue number 5 of Young Lust. And it's from 1977. And much to my surprise, motherfucking Guy Caldwell has a story in here with some incredible art as usual. But I mean, what else would you expect? A wordless short story with a bunch of people having an orgy in the woods. What more do you need? Absolutely nothing. So that's really exciting, and again, in beautiful shape. This book is in really nice shape. The majority of what I wanted to buy from this guy was women's comics, the series Women's Comics. And the other things that I added in were more just to get these. And again, when it was costing me no extra to throw in extra books, I figured what the hell. So we have Women's Comics number 2. Women's Comics number 3 with a spectacular back cover too. And a Lee Mars front cover. I thought that looked familiar. I think there's a Lee Mars story inside as well. The Return of Women's Comics, issue number 8. Another great back cover there. Women's Comics, issue number 9. This is getting into the 80s now. The previous one probably was, 82, I think, and then I think it's 83 on this one. And then finally, Women's Comics number 10 from what looks like 1985 or something like that. So there we go. So I'm really excited to have those. I really like the Trina Robbins and Women's Comics stuff that I have already, the one issue of Women's Comics that I have already. So I'm looking forward to digging into those. And then finally, he had this that I was unfamiliar with, but my I love Bernie Wrightson. As I mean, you know, if you're into some of the comics that all of us who are watching this channel are into, I'm pretty sure it's a no-brainer that you're into Bernie Wrightson. So this is from the NYCA gallery from October 1977, and it's the Bernie Wrightson catalog. I haven't looked too much into this yet. Like I said, I just got this package this afternoon. But it looks like it's kind of there's a Bernie Wrightson exhibition, the New York Comic Arts Gallery, October 1977, and then this kind of lists some pages and things that were going to be up for sale. There's a Swamp Thing cover in here, a vignette of the cover of Swamp Thing number 9 from March-April 1974. So a catalog beforehand of what's going to be there, and I don't know if it was an auction type of scenario or if it was a walk-in and things are just priced as they're priced. So that's really cool to have a copy of that, and again, it's in excellent shape, as are those women's comics and stuff. So there you go. That's it. That is the undergrounds that I've picked up. Haven't had a chance to sit and look through that last stack and to make all the notes and write on the back of the backing boards and everything. But I'll probably do that now while this video is uploading. I probably will put it into 2 parts. So over the next couple of days, I'll start shooting some footage of the interiors of some of these books. Maybe I'll set it to the usual crazy soundtracks that I do, and we'll just take a look through a bunch of the books. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. I hope I didn't ramble on too long. If you made it through the whole thing, I appreciate it. Call me a dirty old pervert down in the comment section if you like to show me that you watch my whole video. Not that it matters, but I'm really excited about all of this eBay luck that I'm having, and I know that it's only a matter of time before I have some big disaster. I'm waiting on one more thing from eBay that's going to come in about a week or 2, and that has one of my top 10 lists to get for this year. One of my Grail comics is in that pack coming, which I'm incredibly excited to hold that sucker in my hands. Yeah, and like I said, the guy in Quebec, for anybody who is interested, I mean, obviously I'll talk to him beforehand, but if anybody is seriously interested in picking up some undergrounds, maybe people who are here in Canada or in the States, I can always talk to him and pass on lists. If you're serious about wanting to buy some, because like I said, the collection that he has is just fucking enormous. The lists that he gave me and how long these lists are is mind-boggling. I don't even want to know what the size of his collection is, because as I said, he doesn't only collect undergrounds. So I really feel like I've hit a jackpot, which I'm very excited for. So thanks very much for watching, everybody, and we'll talk to you.